Welcome. Welcome to the live stream for tonight, February 1st, 2017. Let's see who is on. So, while people are getting here, just a couple of things. I got a new microphone. I actually got two different microphones. So, this is microphone one. Tonight, I now have four microphones. Four. So, between the four of them, one should work for this. So this is one of my new microphones. I have another microphone that I haven't even opened yet in this bag. So we'll see how this one does. The volume is turned up all the way. Hopefully everybody can hear okay and that this one works better than the last one. So we'll go from there. So Lucy's here. Hello. Carrie. Narden. Shara. Welcome, Misty, Andrea. Lots of people are coming in. Welcome. So for those of you, I'm not sure who all made the book club last night, but that was kind of a first. We're switching up the book club thing a little bit. And Lucy was a good sport. It was me and her last night, and which can be, it's intimidating enough for me, and I do this every single week, the live stream thing. So Lucy, really, you did a great job, and thank you for being so go with the flow. I know it can be intimidating to share your story and to kind of put yourself out there like this, especially in front of this many people. So one of the big takeaways that I got from last night from the book club was how many people were saying how helpful it was. I think it would really to hear the discussion between mainly another person, right? Like it's, I have my own take on this. I have my own experiences with this, but I think it can be really add other layers of clarity and validation when people can hear the experiences of somebody else. So I think that's going to be, sharing other people's stories is going to be a direction that I go in more often. So maybe maybe in March, we'll kind of explore that a little bit more. So lots of people around tonight. Yes. Okay, Lucy says it was all good. Okay, good. I'm glad. Thank you so much for rolling with it. Martine, Quentin, Narden has a question. Yes, please, go ahead. Angie says, I learned that narcissists are extremely entitled. Whoa. Yes, to a point. So like what you recently learned, multiply that by like 100. And then you'll have a better picture of it. Because normal, decent people tend to think that other people are normal and decent and that they have some sort of line in the sand for that, where that level of entitlement goes. And for people that are really far on that spectrum of narcissism, their level of entitlement is way far out there and beyond anything that most of us can even begin to comprehend. It really takes us getting burned time and time again to really start to see the full level of their entitlement and the full level of their destruction and their deceit and the manipulations. So, yes, Kuda Babe says, oh, you're back on. Yes, twice this week. We had a book club last night, and then tonight's going to be more of the question and answer. Yes. Michael says, 8 days of no contact with my ex-narc. I've been using Vipassana meditation to help with the moments of cognitive dissonance. I've realized that most of our shared interests were simply mirroring. Yes. Really, that's what it is. It's all of these character traits or all of these hobbies or all of these interests or whatever we're interested in. A truly skilled emotional manipulator will really mirror that back to their target, and it creates this level of depth and intimacy that really aren't there. And so a lot of people really struggle with that because that manufactured depth and that manufactured intimacy, it can really feel like, wow, I've really met this perfect person. I've really met my soulmate, when in fact it's just somebody mirroring all of the things that you like about you. They're just mirroring them back to you. So yes. Alcuda Babe says, isn't it better to shut down around a narcissist so you don't get hurt anymore? It definitely, emotionally, yes. So there's a term for this. It's called gray rock. Oh, people are saying my volume is down. So, hold on just a second. To shut down around them. Yes, okay. So if it's better to shut down around them, it's going. There's a term called going gray rock, and so that's basically where you're like emotionally detaching, and so you're shutting down emotionally, that almost sounds like a negative connotation, but it's not. So you're basically really guarding your emotions. You're valuing them. Like you're valuing your emotions, you're valuing your time, you're valuing your energy in all of this. So instead of getting so locked in and trying to forever reach a solution with a person that's not solutions oriented, is gray rock. At least that's kind of the foundation of gray rock. In practice, it's more of also practicing not getting ruffled by whatever they're saying or doing. So really making a concerted effort to just stay cool, calm, and collected when you're around somebody that's looking to abuse, use, or exploit you, basically. And to try to anticipate as best as you possibly can the different types of behavior that they have. Because everybody kind of, emotional manipulators, they tend to all have the same, well, I shouldn't say this. Each one of them tends to have their own unique moves. That's a better way of saying that. So once you kind of realize, okay, what moves do they normally do? Like, do they normally try to make you jealous, or to try to make you angry, or do they call you names, or do they do silent treatment, or do they just up and disappear, or is it the hot cold game? Like, what elements have you experienced with them? And then to try to prepare yourself emotionally as much as possible, so when they do those moves, then you're not so thrown off balance by them. Martine says, I have a hard time gray rocking. It feels like lying. So when somebody was love bombing, I just opted to tell her I wasn't well and taking time for myself. I just have no guts at the moment. And I could see how a person might feel that way, that maybe gray rock is manipulative or somehow lying, but it's really not. It's going slow enough that you value, like that you value yourself, you value your emotions, you value your time, and then you're in charge. Like you have the power and control in the situation, right? This is all about us maintaining our power and control, and then instead of reacting to situations, to actually have the ability to respond. So if we're experiencing something that's problematic, to be able to slow things down enough and to distance ourselves to where we feel that, okay, things are moving at a comfortable speed, I'm in control of my power and control, I'm okay with what's going on here, and then setting boundaries with somebody to the best of your ability, to where you're not feeling confused, you're not feeling thrown off balance, you're not feeling like things are moving too quickly. Gray rock, the whole emotional distance thing, I think can really be a challenge for a lot of people, especially if we're used to moving really fast. So I think a lot of us have this thing where we really like getting like deep with a person pretty much right away. We like really deep, intense conversations. We like different level, possibly even like different levels of intimacy with somebody. Like I'm a big fan of really deep conversations, right? I'm not a fan of small talk and surface stuff. Like I really want to know what's going on with another person, which can be fine if you're dealing with a person that's sincere. And so when you're first meeting somebody, you don't know, like you don't know who they really are. So it takes some time. This is why going slow is good, to not be so quick to get to that level of depth with another person. And so if we're taking things slow, if we're kind of giving some emotional distance there, it can feel very abnormal for us because if we're not used to moving that slow. But it's not. It's actually it's healthy. Like it's healthy to back things up and to take things at a pace that you're comfortable with. Yes, Martine says, yes, this was my point too. She was sending me nothing but flattery, no deep conversation at all. It was rather shallow. So, yeah. And, I think distancing yourself by whatever means necessary. Practice boundaries. Boundaries takes practice. And boundaries it takes practice being assertive with somebody. So, and Lucy is talking about, she says, I can't do gray rock either because it's not genuine. I see no point in a relationship where I have to act and pretend. I've tried it, but it makes me feel bad inside. I'd rather go no contact. Yes, I agree, Lucy. I'm with you completely. So if I'm at a point where if I'm feeling like I'm having to walk on eggshells and I'm having to distance myself emotionally and really practice like not getting provoked and things are that, there's that tension there. I'm the same way. Like I even get close to situations like that and I'm out the door. Like I just don't, especially if I have control over it. Like if it's a friendship or a relationship, no, I'm done. Like I'm done. Life's too short. It's for that. Like that's just, it's difficult. Life's difficult enough. Like people should be bringing value and enhancing your life, not draining your energy and having you feel like you're walking on eggshells. If you're having to walk on eggshells with another person, that's a really great sign that this person in this situation is not for you. Really, it boils down to that. So, the gray rock, I still think the gray rock strategy can be really useful, especially around situations where a person might feel like that they can't so easily disengage. So possibly with family or with coworkers, to where if you're catching yourself continually becoming reactive, paying attention to that and like kind of what's going on, what buttons are being pushed, and trying to distance yourself emotionally, there's actually a lot that can kind of come from that, because it can be interesting if you can get to the place where you are you're able to distance yourself enough to not feel like you're locked into this battle with this other person. That's where it can kind of get kind of cool. Like a weird, almost sadistic way. But if you can turn inward and start paying attention to those emotions that are being provoked, and then trying to replace anger with curiosity, it is where things can get really interesting. Like, why is this provoking me? Like, why, kind of what meaning am I assigning to this? Why is this bothering me? And because we're rarely upset, there's this whole saying, like, we're rarely upset for the reasons that we think. And there's a lot of truth to that. So, and there's a couple questions in here that I was going to go into more depth with, but being like, yeah, okay, what's this about? And also you can take it another step further and ask yourself, in what other areas have I experienced a similar emotion? Like if I'm really upset that this person let me down, have I ever felt this strongly in other areas of my life? Like who else has let me down like this? Where else did these feelings come up? Because when we are getting provoked like that, it can be, if we can distance ourselves enough, it can be really great pointers to other areas in our life that could use some examining and some healing. X2Y2 says, slow moving is not authentic for me. Small talk is a waste of time. Yes. I'm not a fan of small talk either, but it's, oh, I need to make this thing. Oh wait, here it is. Let's see what kind of shape this is in. Not very good shape. I need to make this into a handout because I think it's such a good example of healthy boundaries. So just look at the circles. Don't look at my handwriting because it's all messy. This comes from, I think it's from Healing the Child Within. And so he talks about healthy boundaries. So here you have, each circle is a person. So like with a stranger, you have, an appropriate distance between you, not just physically, but, financially and emotionally and kind of on every level. So because you don't know this person. So you're having to kind of gauge them, because anybody can be anything. People put on a very good act, generally for like at least the first 3 or 4 times of meeting them, generally the first 30 to 90 days. So it's really important to go slow and make sure that you're not seeing their highest and best self, that you're seeing them for who they really are. It's sort of like with a job interview, right? Like everybody's on their best behavior at their job interview. They don't tend, like that's the best you're gonna see them. Like after that, it's kind of downhill, right? Like they're probably not gonna normally dress that way. They're probably not going to be so polished, and it's, so you just don't know. You just don't know with people. This is why it's so important to take things slow. So over time, as you're getting to know a person, and casual conversation, you're kind of feeling the waters, and you're paying attention to the things that they're saying. You're paying attention to how they're responding to what you have to say. You're paying attention to any red flags that you might be feeling. Then this person kind of becomes a casual acquaintance. So these circles, there we go, there's a glare, move closer together. So, now conversation's becoming a little bit more personal, but it's still not in-depth personal kind of stuff. And then, through a series of other conversations and time is a huge, huge factor in all of this, because again, anybody can pretend to be anything for, at least the first 30 or so days. So then, close friends, there's overlap. So there's sharing of about, 15, 20% of important things with a person's life. And then intimate relationships, you're at about, 35 to 50%. So you're not making this other person your whole life, and you're not necessarily dumping everything on them. You're maybe not even sharing everything with them. You're sharing a lot, and there is definitely that connection there, but there's still a sense of self, I guess is what I'm saying. Then he also had the boundary of people that are enmeshed. So this would be people that are overly involved in each other's stuff, and there really is no sense of self. There is no sense of like where I end and where you begin kind of a thing. There's this really, really blurred boundaries. I added something to this I did an article, a blog article about this on boundaries, and I added one to it that's not on here. And so mine, let me draw this here. Mine was, let me see. Okay, now it's going to have to go there because there's no room. So if this is the boundaries with a stranger, right? So there's this kind of like, healthy distance. Like, I don't really know who you are. I'm going to be polite and pleasant, but I'm going to keep my distance. If you know a person's actively working against you, if they've broken trust, then the healthy thing to do would be to back way up. So then now you're really keeping quite a bit of distance between you and this other person, more so than if they are a total stranger, because they've this is kind of the level of trust, right? Like this is the progression of trust. If trust has been broken, they're not just a stranger. They're in many ways, they're an enemy. So it's really healthy to back things way up and realize, okay, this person's been actively working against me. They've broken my trust. They've shown that they're not trustworthy, that they're not, that they are dishonest, that they are doing, what have you, to back things up enough to where you're really keeping a healthy, solid distance. So I hope that helps. People are still talking about Grey Rock. Patania, I'm not sure how to say that name. Patania says, I fundamentally disagree with Grey Rock. I think it's a form of condoning their behavior because I am letting them get away with it. That is really interesting. I had never really thought about that before. I could see that. I think, like Lucy had mentioned earlier, if a person can actually go no contact and they can distance themselves, that would be ideal. But I think for a lot of people, for a wide variety of reasons, they can't fully go no contact. Maybe they have children with this person, or they are stuck in a marriage. They can't financially leave, or they're afraid, or the person's family, and they're like, this is just going to be too much. Like I can't. So it's still a good skill to have, the whole emotional detachment thing in general. Even if a person's not going Grey Rock, I think it can still be incredibly useful, because when we can kind of detach from things emotionally, we bring a sense of space to the situation. So we're not so emotionally engaged. And when we can back up and bring that sense of space to a situation, then we can be more observant about what's going on, and potentially like what, like I was mentioning earlier, what's triggering us, and where is this coming from, and why, and in what other areas have we felt this way. And we can just bring so much more observation and curiosity and awareness to the situation. It really just makes life a lot easier in general if we can detach. This is something that I continually work on. I have, I have a job, and so there's many things at work where I don't, it's a job. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with, and I by no stretch do this perfectly. It's all, work in progress for sure, where I try to pay attention to what type of reactions that I have that were they disproportionate to this situation? And if so, why? Like, what's really going on there? There's a lot of, I think, information and insight that can come from paying attention to our emotions, but it's really hard to pay attention to our emotions if we're so caught up in them. It's a lot easier if we can take a step back and realize that we are not our emotions. We really truly are like more of the watcher of our emotions. That's just when things get really interesting. And if you can disengage from your emotions and practice watching them, it's sort of like envisioning yourself laying on a grassy hill and your emotions are clouds that are going overhead. And you're like, oh, there's jealousy. And you kind of just sit with it and you observe it and you just watch it, just like a cloud. Like you watch it form, and then you watch it take shape, and it's kind of doing its own thing, and then it dissipates, and then it moves on. And then the next one is anger, and kind of watching that one surface, and like, oh, this is so, and just trying to get really curious, like, this is so interesting. What an interesting emotion to be having. Okay, and what's, just, I don't know, just kind of just watching it and just bringing as much curiosity to it as possible. So with that, let me hop into this question here, because it kind of goes along with this. And this is from Mr. R, who says, Hi Dana, I have been watching your YouTube videos dealing with abusive relationships for about a year now. Your videos are amazing. Thank you so much for your great content. Well, thank you. Like many others, my toxic relationship has left me a mess. I assume my girlfriend has borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder or something. It has been so difficult to let her go. Right now, I'm trying my best to really stay no contact. I'm going on the 4th or 5th try. I've lost count. I know I must have something wrong with me too for not being able to move on without her. I know I should not be with her or even talk to her. The thing that destroys me is knowing about her promiscuous ways. How or when will that hurt lessen? She is hundreds of miles away, so it should be easier for me, but it is not. Thank you in advance. If you do find time to respond to this email, I hope and I value your feedback. There's so much more I wish to articulate, but trying to put my relationship into words just jumbles my mind. So, okay, so great question. And here's the thing. We experience pain with something. Pain really comes from the meaning that we attach to something. So, and of course it's normal, right? So if you had feelings for somebody, you have feelings for her still. You were in a relationship. It's totally normal that you're going to have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that she's promiscuous and she's sleeping around. That's a painful thing for anybody to experience. But what can help a person, I think, move forward is to realize that oftentimes our emotions come from how we are perceiving, the meaning that we're assigning to these different experiences. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you could change the meaning that you're assigning to it, to her behavior, instead of being like, oh, this is so painful and she doesn't love me, or that I'm somehow not enough, or whatever meaning that you're assigning to this. You could replace it with, okay, her behavior is incredibly painful and this is a sign that this is not the kind of woman that I want in my life. And if you can change the meaning, you can change how you feel with it. So if you can perceive it as, oh my gosh, okay, this is her behavior, this is a clear sign that this is not the kind of woman that I want or need in my life. Like, if anything, this is a really clear sign that this is highly problematic and it would never ever have worked out. This would never end well. And so if you can kind of reframe how you're perceiving her behavior, that can really help. It can really help with that pain. So another thing too with the pain is realizing, because things hurt, experiences hurt when it's not for us, really, is what it boils down to. So pain, all of our emotions are great messengers. They all have a message for us. They're all designed for some sort of purpose, to deliver a message. And so pain is no exception. So if a person's experiencing pain, especially when it comes to like relationships, it's a sign that, you know, this other person, their behavior is like a hot stove, you know, like a physical hot stove. If you touch it, you get burned, it causes pain. Some people have behavior like this, that's like hot stove behavior. So when you're around it, you know, you get burned, it causes pain. It would be problematic if you weren't experiencing pain with that. So it's a very normal response to a very abnormal situation, and that pain is designed to keep you safe. So even though it's incredibly painful, it's really working in your highest and greatest good. So if you can kind of practice embracing it and being thankful, like, oh, I'm so glad that this is registering as problematic, because boy, this would really not work if this wasn't even hitting your radar as a problem. So I hope that helps. Let me scroll down here. Lori says, I'm trying so hard to not get on antidepressants. I tried trazodone for sleep. It made me feel awful. Some say it can be done without meds, and if not, which medication is the best? Well, you know, everybody's body, everybody reacts differently to medication, and it's one of those things, you know, a lot of it's just trial and error and figuring out what works best for you. So really it's a discussion, you know, to have with your doctor and see what some options are, see if they can maybe, you know, kind of point you in the right direction. Stuff, you know, some non-medical things that you might want to try or maybe add to the mix if you are going to, things that you could do in addition to medication would be, there's a lot, I'm a huge fan, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, videos that are guided imagery, relaxation. Jason Stevenson is a guy, there's, Michael Seeley is another. I think they're both fantastic, and they're free, you know, they're videos on YouTube, guided imagery type videos. I'm trying to get in the habit of doing this every night before I go to bed because I sleep so much better. It really just slows my brain down. That can help, and that can help anybody that's, I think, having trouble relaxing. So they have videos for anxiety, they have videos for sleep, they have there's also videos on binaural beats and different things to try to slow down an overactive brain, which anxiety will do that to a person. So that might be something. Trying to get into a routine at night, something that helps you to decompress. So, you know, turning off technology at least an hour or so before bedtime, taking the time, really tripling up on your self-care. So taking a hot bath, if that's something that you find relaxing, making sure the lights are off in your room if you're a person that sleeps with all your lights off, getting really comfortable. Something else that helps me is, this is something I still do, but this is something that I really did back then, was really taking time for gratitude, because a lot of anxiety, it's fear-driven kind of stuff, and so the best kind of antidote to fear is gratitude. So taking time before you get out of bed in the morning, maybe even throughout the day, especially at night, to just lay there and however you want to phrase things. So you could say, if you believe in God, you could say something like, you know, thank you, God, thank you for the health that I do have. You know, thank you, God, thank you for, you know, if it's snowing outside, you know, thank you, God, thank you for the snow outside. It's so beautiful to look at. Or thank you, God, thank you that I live in a place that there is no snow. You know, or thank you, God, thank you that I have, you know, $5 in the bank, or that I have some food in the fridge, or that for me, my ongoing thing is I almost every single day, I am continually just amazed that we live in a time and in a place where there is clean hot water at our fingertips, that we can turn on the shower and take a clean hot shower. Like, what a gift. What a gift. So being thankful because there's so much really always to be thankful and grateful for. And this isn't to minimize anything that a person's going through or the bad, but it helps us to realize that while there might be a lot of stress and really intense, deep stuff going on, there's also a lot of good things to be grateful for. And really paying attention to what you're feeding your brain is huge. So I know when a lot of people again, myself included, going through the healing process and all this, especially if they're so fresh out, and this stuff can be so all consuming, and they find themselves watching a lot of YouTube videos or doing a lot of reading or being in a lot of different support groups, and I think there's a lot of benefit to that for sure, but it really does help to turn things off at a certain point every day, and to let your brain just wind down. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Erin had asked, it says, Dear Dana, are there hostage negotiator techniques to get out of a narcissistic relationship? I think step one in getting out of any type of abusive relationship is to really know your opponent, know what you're up against, and do they have certain behaviors? Have they ever gotten physical with you, and if so, how? And have they ever threatened you? Have they ever, do they call names? Do they yell? Do they? Everybody's situation is going to be different because everybody's different. So it's really kind of knowing, your situation best. So really, okay, what are the different factors at play in your situation? Do you have a joint account? Do you have, more than one vehicle? Kind of like knowing your situation really well, and then knowing this other person and knowing the type of moves that they tend to make, and then trying to prepare yourself accordingly. So, and you prepare yourself accordingly by anticipating their behavior as much as possible. So if you do share a bank account, realizing, okay, if you were to leave, they're probably going to try to freeze funds or get you removed off the account or drain the account. So preparing for that ahead of time. How can you, get your name off of the account, or somehow split things up, or have some sort of access to funds? How could you possibly open up a credit card in your name only? Lots of different factors at play. Could you potentially call a domestic violence shelter and get them to help walk you through some elements of a safety plan? There's a safety plan on my website. If you go to thriveafterabuse.com and look up safety plan, and it goes over in depth, like a lot of different things to think about if a person's going to leave. So safety plans are good to develop for really like physical safety. A lot of things that a person wouldn't really think about. So how to actually leave, what to do, some ideas with what to do with pets, or how to arrange things for medication, making sure that you have enough medication, making sure that you have copies of important papers, or ideally originals of important papers, especially if it's your stuff, like your birth certificate, your social security card, those kinds of things. A spare set of keys, kind of a packing a go bag. So if you have to leave in a hurry, that you can leave and there's a bag that you keep at a friend's house, or that you keep, somewhere where they don't know where it's at. And, so lots of different things, because you're basically planning an escape plan. I mean, that's really what you're talking about, like a hostage negotiator techniques is how to be able to get free from this person. I will say one of the things that tends to be fairly universal with narcissistic people by any name that they might go by is the need for power and control. So anticipate when they tend to start losing power and control. Like if you are going to leave, they're generally not going to handle that well. So anticipating that up front, especially if they have ever gotten physical, to make sure that if they've ever gotten physical, that might even be something. And again, your situation best. if they've ever been physical, if you're, or even if they haven't, even if you've got that feeling that you might be in danger, to leave in a way that you let them know. Like, you don't discuss it. You don't. There's no discussion. Like, it's a one-way conversation. You're just letting them know that you've left, and then realizing they don't handle these things well. So anticipating that narcissistic rage, which can make a person it can make them very unpredictable. So making sure that you are safe if you are going to leave. And, I'm a big fan of erring on the side of caution. Always, always, always. Because other people, even police, even attorneys, even friends and family, even people at a domestic violence shelter, don't know your situation as well as you do. Like, you know the situation best. You know this person best. You've seen their darkest sides. So it's really important that you really go with your gut on this and err on the side of caution. So the safety plan helps with preparing yourself physically and financially. I would also encourage you to prepare yourself as much as you possibly can emotionally. So that can be done in a number of ways. So potentially, if you're concerned about leaving, which it sounds like you are with your situation, I would consider creating some totally fake accounts, like a totally different name on Facebook, and joining some different support groups under that name. And so that way he can't or she can't trace that back to you and somehow get into those groups, and it's just that can be really problematic. So being really careful about that, creating fake accounts, joining some support groups for emotional support. If you have some friends and family that you trust and that you feel are supportive of this, letting them know what's going on, only if you feel like they're not going to let your former partner know. So, and also writing out a list, because it still can be very difficult to leave an abusive relationship, even if it's abusive, because there's still bonds that are there. And so when a person leaves, there's oftentimes a lot of like confusion, there's a lot of nostalgia that sets in, there's a wide mix of emotions, and to kind of prepare yourself for that as well. Because even if you think, oh no, like that's not going to happen, I'm done, it still can happen. And it's, again, better safe than sorry, erring on the side of caution. So making a list of all of the reasons that you're wanting to end things and not wanting to go back. So if that nostalgia does kick in, that you can go back and you can read that list, or you can make a video of yourself explaining to yourself why you are leaving and going back and watching that video. And that'll help to kind of, help you stay no contact. Let's see. Cecilia, hello. Says that she found a meetup group that she liked. That's awesome. Okay. Let's see. Oh, what's the time on? I'm trying to remember to write down like the approximate time on the questions, and I keep forgetting. So, okay, here's one from a mother who says, I have just come to the awakening that my 30-year-old son has a lot of borderline and narcissistic personality disorder features. He has taken me for such a ride, and I refuse to believe it because he's my only child for whom I had unconditional love. He recently took me for almost all my money. I look back now and I see how he contributed to the divorce between my husband and I. He blamed me for his father's death when he died in 2006 in a car accident. I've been so guilty and paranoid, and he has financially finished me. He came to live here with me, and I couldn't believe what I allowed to happen. I am sick to my stomach, depressed, and can't function. Yesterday he pulled me in again to give him $100 for peanut butter and jelly because he found himself hopeless in New York. I don't hear much about cases where the adult child is the narcissist. I'm afraid he's going to try to come back and my heart is broken. He is my only child and my only family, but he is killing me. Do you have any advice or references for when a child is the narcissistic abuser? Thanks. So, yes, this is, this, it happens probably a lot more than we all realize. It's just one of those things that's not discussed very often. And I think parents of children that have, like narcissistic or like sociopathic kind of behavior like that, there's a certain level of, like you're saying, these like, all of these mixed emotions, and a lot of other people don't understand. So it's very similar to when a child cuts off contact or really goes very low contact with a problematic parent, like a narcissistic parent. All of the challenges that they face where other friends and family don't understand, and they're like, oh my gosh, how could you do this? This is your mother, how can you cut off contact with her? Or this is your father, how can you cut off contact? And you should really forgive and forget, and blah 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 blah. And it's the same type of challenges but in reverse. And so I think realizing, okay, a lot of people aren't going to understand because they're not you and they're not in this situation, and they're probably going to really minimize and justify your decision if you really are going to go low contact or no contact with him. And I can only imagine how difficult that situation would be, especially after the loss of his father, and then realizing, okay, this relationship, it's like you said, it's killing you. So if that's the case, at a minimum, setting some solid boundaries. And so if he calls again saying, okay, son, here's the deal, I can't do this anymore. This isn't working for me. I love you, but there's going to be no more money. I'm not loaning you money. I'm, quote unquote, loaning you money. I'm not loaning you money anymore. We're not giving you money anymore. You're a man now, you're an adult, it's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet, and and kind of navigating that boundary however you feel is most appropriate. So if you're feeling like, okay, I need to just cut him off completely, that's okay. This is all about you doing what you feel is best. If you feel that, and realizing too, like I said earlier, other people are not going to be okay with it. So to try to prepare yourself emotionally for that as well. And so something that you could say, if other people, if they were to find out that you cut off contact with them, because that might be an angle that he goes to, is then to contact friends and family and spin this around to where he's the victim, and that you're so mean and cruel and unreasonable, right? And so then you might start getting what's called flying monkeys, where you're basically getting these other manipulated people that are trying to push you back into reopening contact with him. So if that happens, you can let them know, okay, this is the boundary that I'm drawing. And if they say, oh my gosh, how can you do this? He's your child. You can say something like, I know, isn't this so awful? Like, you would think that my only child would treat his only parent a lot better than this, but I can't have him in my life with, stealing money and using, abusing, and exploiting me. That I can't have that. And it was so incredibly difficult for me to get to this point, but I had this, what other choice do I have? And then also realizing, you don't have to justify or argue or defend or explain yourself. Like, this is your boundary. Other people don't need to be okay with it. They don't get a vote. It's not a democracy. This is your life. So preparing yourself emotionally for that. You might want to do a search, now that I'm thinking about it. Actually, let me do a quick search to see if there are support groups out there. You're definitely more than welcome to join either one of my support groups, because it's the same no matter The behavior is the same. How people react to it is the same. The reaction from other people tends to be the same. So you might find a lot of support in different types of support groups out there. So let's see. Narcissistic child. Let's see what's out there. So there's a couple different sites out there. Generally, it's the other way, the other way around, where it's children of narcissistic parents. But I think that you'll still find a lot of that validation and clarity in any type of support group if you were to join and go that route. So I guess long story short, boundaries. It's okay and healthy to draw them. Trying to somehow, if you have, like you said, if you're getting to the point where you're having to sink yourself in order to save him or save the relationship, then there really isn't much of a relationship there, and things are definitely way out of alignment if things are this extreme that you're to this point emotionally. So I wish you all the best with this, and I hope that you're able to find the support that you need. So take care. Okay, let me... Okay. Halkuda Babe is going to bed. Okay, good night. Okay, this is from Miss Holland. Let me write down the time on this. Who says, Dear Dana, I'm going through a divorce from a man who I believe is a covert narcissist. About a year ago, our 10-year-old son was diagnosed with Asperger's and ADHD. Both my ex and I recognized a lot of our son's autism. Oh, wait a minute. I think a friend and I recognized a lot of... Oh, wait a minute. I'm confused. Both my ex and I recognized a lot of our son's autism symptoms in my ex. So I first thought that ex... Oh, I see. Maybe there's... Okay. I'm confused who's who. But... Okay, so you're thinking that your ex also has some autism-like symptoms. So she says, at first I thought that my ex probably had some sort of autism spectrum disorder as well. Since then, my ex confessed to his having a girlfriend, and more stuff came to light, and eventually I ended up reading about narcissism, and I found your channel. My question is this: could a person have both autism and narcissism? I'm not entirely convinced, although I see some overlap. I mean, could this? Sure. I mean, and people can have a wide variety of things. So like a person could be, they could be autistic and have, narcissistic personality disorder, and they could also be schizophrenic, and they could be an alcoholic, and they could be a diabetic, and they could have cancer, and, so on and on and on. So people can have more than one thing going on with them. The only way to really tell for certain would be to go to have him go to a doctor and then get some sort of like formal, clinical assessment done. But, with autism, it's more of that emotional, I'm preaching to the choir on this one because you're I'm sure dealing with a lot of these challenges with your son, where it's that more of that like emotional detachment and possibly kind of not picking up on like certain social cues. When a person's more on that narcissistic side, where their behavior, it's really selfish, it's all about them, they're not really thinking about anybody else, they're causing a person pain, they feel justified and entitled, that's more of like kind of there can be a lot of overlap between the two, but I think it's more kind of what's driving that. Because more with autism, it tends to be more of a kind of like benign or clueless indifference. Like they might cause a person pain, like an autistic person might cause another person pain, but it's generally not, it's just because they missed those social cues, they just didn't, there's generally not like, bad intent behind it, or like even really like a selfish intent. It's just they just didn't realize that they were crossing a line. And generally, if you tell them, it's something that they do tend to like, oh, okay, I didn't they didn't realize it. And so then, depending kind of where they are in the spectrum, they might do things a little bit different next time, or that might just be kind of like that. They might have like certain quirks that don't tend to change, but like living a double life, that kind of thing, that's definitely selfish, entitled, problematic behavior. I hope that helps. Carolina says, is it inappropriate to talk to our marriage counselor alone to ask if she sees my hubby's narcissistic traits? We've been going on 5 months. I need to know if she sees his behaviors that are on display in each session. Yeah, I mean, to me that seems completely appropriate, but realize too, I think every counselor is different, and I would hope, really, like a good marriage counselor should be able to sniff out what's going on within like 3 or 4 sessions, not 5 months. So if you're seeing like a lot of really problematic behavior with them, and frankly too, a good marriage counselor, if they're seeing signs of like this person is like personality disordered, like if you're dealing with not even like, it doesn't even need to be that far. If they're like, okay, this person is just, their behavior is so outside the realm of normal, I would hope that she would say something to you, or whoever your marriage counselor is, instead of just, because what's the plan here? So, and I think too with you, it's important to get clear in your mind, where is your line in the sand? How much time and energy and emotion and money and all of this are you going to throw at this? And what kind of changes do you need to see happen? And I think the more clear you can get about that, then you'll know. Then you'll know when you're like, okay, you know what? This is what it means to me to have tried my best before I actually just walk away. This is why I'm not like, I struggle with this with counseling, because it can be really validating if you have another person that's saying, hey, what I'm seeing is highly problematic. This person's not budging. It's been 5 months and their behavior is not changing. They're incredibly defensive. They're not even aware that they have a problem. If they're doing all these things, it can, and if you're waiting around, waiting for this counselor to say, yes, this person's a narcissist, or yes, this is abuse, or what have you, you could be waiting a really, really long time, because for a wide variety of reasons. And I think this, and even still, like, it's nice to have validation from somebody else, but the counselor's not in your marriage, you are. And so even if the counselor said, you know what, actually I see nothing wrong at all with this behavior, like, let's just tease this situation out, right? So what if she were to say that? Like, I see absolutely nothing wrong with his behavior. Does it matter? Does it matter? So asking yourself, okay, if nobody else is validating me and I'm seeing that it's a problem, this is not working for me, is that enough? At what point am I willing to cut bait and drive on? Because waiting for validation from other people, you can be waiting for an awful long time. And this is why, again, I think it's so important for you to get really crystal clear with yourself as far as like a time frame, what kind of behaviors you need to see change before you do something different. It's not an easy decision by any stretch. And, you know, you could always pull her aside and talk to her about it, but, you know, and you might even want to start seeing a counselor for individual counseling as well. Just my 2 cents. Yes, SM says, my new therapist refused to accept my ex as a narcissist. She feared to because it meant she had diagnosed him without seeing him. So this topic is brushed aside. By and large, it really, really is, because for that would be one reason, but you know, there's a wide variety of reasons. A lot of people, you know, narcissistic personality disorder, it's one of those things where when it's not diagnosed very often, and I think one of the reasons being is most people, when they think about narcissistic personality disordered people, they think of somebody that's very grandiose, like Napoleon or King Louis, right? So somebody that's like really, really over the top, like slam dunk, that's a problem. But the problem with that is that a lot of problematically narcissistic behavior isn't grandiose, and it's not, they don't need to have to be continually admired. So those are two of like the defining characteristics of narcissism that really don't apply to a lot of narcissistic people out there. So I think it can be helpful, because a lot of people get hung up on this, and I get it because I was there too, where they're thinking about people's behavior in terms of either this person has narcissistic personality disorder or they're normal. And it's not so black and white. So it's not like a person's either pregnant or they're not pregnant, or you have cancer or like you don't have cancer. It's not that cut and dry. It's personality traits, and they're on a spectrum. So if you think about this, and everybody is on this spectrum. If you think about the spectrum ranging from being, you know, giving to taking, okay, it's kind of our orientation of self. Like, where do we fit on this spectrum? And either at either end of that spectrum can be really problematic. So if a person, let me draw this out. Okay. Okay. All right. So if this is the spectrum here of giving and taking, so, and we're all on, it's not a, it's, and the reason I drew it as a U shape, I'll cover here in just a second. But if you look at that, so in the middle here, ranging on this side, this between these two lines, this would be, like, you could say, considered healthy narcissism. So healthy narcissism, it's that ability to set goals, to think about yourself in a positive light. You're like, you know, why not me? Why not now? Like, I can do what I set my mind to, and there's this, it's like a healthy self-esteem, okay? When a person gets past that level, the glare is so bad, they get past this level of healthy narcissism, and they're moving more into like problematic narcissism. So this might be any range of behavior where they're putting themselves continually first, generally at the expense of other people. So, you know, other people around them are not getting their needs met because it's all about them. To the extreme on that taking spectrum is, like, you know, I would say like narcissistic personality disorder, or even narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, where you've got a person that's taking so much from other people that they are using, abusing, and exploiting them. So it's not, so healthy narcissism is, yeah, I can make, why not me? Right? Like that's kind of where that is. Then problematic narcissism is more of it's me over you, right? Me first. Really problematic narcissism, we're talking, narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, that kind of stuff. It's me at the expense of you. It's a me versus you. So that kind of behavior that's when we're talking about, like abusive behavior and exploiting other people and, criminal activity and like really on the far end, that level of entitlement, that justification of, it's just all about me and I don't care about other people. Really problematic. But same thing on the other side of this. So you have giving, right? So in people, like throughout, this is the range, and we all kind of run the gamut at times, depending on our behavior. Hopefully not to like this, this extreme, but where we're giving. So giving, it would be, here it's, like kind of a why not me attitude. And over here with giving, it's sort of like, well, yeah, sure, why not you? And it's putting other people first. So people tend to do this with friends, with family, with children, those kinds of things. It can be over giving can be really problematic when a person is like the question I was reading before with the mother who had the child, and she was giving and giving and giving stuff that she couldn't comfortably give. And she was giving so much in order to try to keep that relationship together. And over giving like that, where we're putting everybody else first, where we're sinking ourselves in order to keep a relationship afloat, that is really problematic. And it can literally sink a person. Like it can literally kill a person. It can drive them to suicide. It's where a person is so far out of alignment that their needs come so far last that their ability to really protect themselves physically, emotionally, financially, is not there because everybody else comes first. Well, that's really problematic when you have a bunch of, and of course that's, kind of chumming the waters of manipulative people because they take advantage, right and left. And this is why, so to guard against that level of like over giving, this is where healthy boundaries and standards come into play of saying no, like realizing you matter, right? You matter, enough is enough, here's my line in the sand, and realizing not everything is workable behavior. This is a big part of having healthy standards and healthy deal breakers. Because for a lot of us, if we're going through things and we're thinking everything can be fixed, everything has a solution, just given enough time, energy, therapy, communication, religion, rehab, what have you. If we're hanging on to the bitter end, not only is the end going to be bitter, the whole journey to the end is going to be bitter. So it's so important that we have an idea of what deal breaker stuff is, so we realize I'm not putting up with this, I'm not going to be treated like this. Here is my line in the sand. Here's when I walk away because I matter. It's not going to be all about this other person. You shouldn't have to teach another adult the basics of adult behavior. If you do, then that's a bigger problem than you might even realize. So okay. Let's see. Let me get a sip of my tea. I was making this mug. Talk about a giant mug. This is my first ever cafe press mug that I tried to make, and it was a total fail. I got it on a couple different levels. For one, it's giant. Like, they were not joking. And I am a giant mug drinking woman, but This is like no joke giant. And yeah, the image, I don't even know what it, like, it's so off center, and yeah, but I still like it. Cecilia says, that mug looks great, Dana. Martine says, Dana, that logo. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Martine, actually, I will brag on him about this. He was the one that came up with the idea to make it into a heart shape. If you can see it. Glare. I don't know why there's so much glare. There we go. Better. Yes. And I love that. I totally love this thing. So yeah, the logo, the resolution's not very good, and the size is weird, and the placement's weird, and the mug is giant, and it weighs like 3 pounds. But Tanya says, "Oh my God, goodness, it's the size of her head." Yes, it is. It's a really heavy when you have it full of tea. So it actually holds 2. Like, I fill it up with my Keurig, so it holds like quite a large volume of tea. But I like it. It was a good trial run. You know, Martine, I would totally send you a mug, a good one that's not all resolution, for your help with coming up with that. Email me your address, and I'll send you one once I get a good one made. Okay, so let me do another question here. All right, so this is from Pat. Pat says, "Hi Dana, thank you for all of your videos. Your channel on YouTube, along with a few others, has helped me on my healing journey. I meditate, practice yoga and self-care with daily affirmations. I feel a subtle shift towards my authentic self, and I'm working on manifesting positive, healthy things for my life. Yay, you. I still have a long way to go, but that leads me to my question. I'm healing from narcissistic abuse. My father was a narcissist. My mother had a lot of narcissistic behavior, although mainly she was codependent, but I'm the youngest of 5 girls. We were raised with toxic, unhealthy, and abusive patterns of behavior. I've been the scapegoat throughout childhood and now in adult life too. I moved back home to heal after my divorce with a narcissistic psychopath, but I'm having a hard time getting back on my feet. I sometimes feel like my situation is helpless and that I'm crazy unless I listen to meditative music and release tense emotions to ease my stress and anxiety. As you can imagine, this makes it hard for me to find sustainable income and stay employed. I feel like I'm constantly dodging potential narcissistic employers too. Do you have any advice on what type of jobs to look for while I heal? Possible employment with limited human contact. My background and experience in sales is getting absolutely nowhere. I might need a miracle at this point. I'm in financial debt, and I've applied to about 70 positions in the past 9 months, and I'm struggling more than ever to find my purpose in life. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you again for all your knowledge, advice, and experience that you share with us all." You are so very welcome. So, everything that you are feeling right now is very normal. It's very, very normal. And the feelings of helplessness, feelings of hopelessness, feelings that you're crazy, really struggling with stress and anxiety, so much of that is normal. And depending on how long that's been going on for, it might be something that, depending on if you're open to it, might be worth a trip to the doctor to kind of see to discuss some potential options. Like I said, if you're open to go on that route. If you're not, that's fine too. But the 2 main therapies out there that a lot of people have reported some really good luck with are the EFT, the tapping therapy, and then EMDR, the eye movement therapy. So that might be something to consider as well, as far as helping you move through all of those emotions to where things can become more bearable for you. And You might want to call a domestic violence shelter in your area and see and ask them if they have any referrals, if they offer free or reduced therapy, if they can recommend, if they could possibly make any recommendations for doctors who are familiar with treating people. Because it sounds like you might have some kind of PTSD type symptoms. A lot of people do. I mean, of course, a doctor would need to be the one to diagnose that, but to see what some options might be as far as getting that treated. And as far as a job goes, okay, so you mentioned a few different things, that you're struggling to find your purpose in life, but you're also struggling to find the job. When you're fresh out of a relationship like this, it can be really stressful to try to put that pressure on yourself to find your purpose in life, right? That's a lot to really put on yourself, and it's okay. It's okay that you don't know what that is right now, because you're in a huge state of transition. You're in this brand new chapter in your life, and so you don't need to know all of the answers right now. You're probably not going to have all the answers right now, and that's totally okay. The answers are going to reveal themselves when the time is right. So right now, I would really encourage you to focus, just triple up on that self-care, and focus on doing things that are going to be the most relaxing, that are going to be kind of the least anxiety inducing. So maybe that might be, I don't know, working as a receptionist at a spa, or doing something. I don't know. You'll have to, obviously, yourself best. So kind of figuring out what environment would be something that would be really relaxing for you, something that would not give you any additional stress in your life, something, that you could do maybe even part-time to start, and just paying attention to how you feel with this. There's plenty of time to figure out, to get into the groove of things, and to really find your purpose. So do something that that feels comfortable and that feels manageable, and not trying to push yourself too hard right now is kind of where the direction I would encourage you to go in. Down the road, once you're feeling more stable, because there's so many things. I mean, when a person goes through a normal divorce, there's so much of your life that's unstable, and it makes a person. It's stressful. It's stressful going through a normal divorce, let alone one with a psychopath. So, really trying to be compassionate with yourself, and realize this is a lot. There's a lot of pieces of this puzzle that I need to put back together, and to just kind of move at a pace that you're comfortable with, and realize this too shall pass. You will get through this. You really, really will. All of this intensity, all of this stress, all of this anxiety, it's normal for what you've gone through. These emotions, all of this stuff's not going to be so intense in time, and to really just be so loving towards yourself as much as you possibly can, and to move forward at a pace that's comfortable into a job that's comfortable for you. Down the road, when you get a little bit more stability, you get comfortable, you're readjusting into your new life, and you are deciding, okay, well, kind of who am I, and what am I about, and what is my purpose, and what do I really want to do? A great way to figure that out can be to start to write down, or to think about to yourself, if time and money were no object, and if you knew that you could not fail, if you had a magic wand, right, and you could do the thing that you really wanted to do, what do you think that would be? And so a lot of people, when they start kind of examining that, it's weird, our brain gets defensive. And Because we might have been told for a long time, oh, that's not possible, that's not reasonable, that's not rational, you know. And so we might find ourselves saying, well, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. But the reality is we do know. We do know. We have to just uncover that. And so you can kind of bypass that defensiveness that your brain's going to throw out at you and say, okay, well, if I did know, then what would I guess? What would I guess it might be? And then write down 10, 20, 30 things that might appeal to you. If time and money were no object and you knew you could not fail, what would that be? And so you might, and it's fun to just kind of let your mind go, to really, really let it go. Don't worry about being reasonable and rational. Just what would it be? Would it be being a writer? Would it be being an artist? Would it be working with foster children? Would it be working with animals? Would it be a belly dancer? Like, I don't know. Would it be a yoga instructor? Just writing down things that feel like they kind of juice you. And then once you get your list down, go back through and try to envision that. So like read the title. So if you're reading it back and you're like, okay, yoga instructor, you're like, okay, that would be kind of cool. And then paying attention to, like, does this really juice me? Like, does this really, really excite me? And if no, then keep going. And so maybe then you're starting to circle the ones that do juice you. So you're like, you know what though? Maybe teaching belly dancing would be really fun. Like, I think I might really like doing that. So then you circle that one. Or if you're like, okay, you know what? Actually, I really like finance. And I think I want to teach finance or sales to, I don't know, to teenagers, right? Like business classes. Then circle that one. So then once you kind of whittle the list down, then go back through it again and really, at a deeper level, feel, like, kind of step into what that would be like on a day-to-day thing. You will know when you get to the one that really, really resonates with you, because tears will spring to your eyes. And it's that feeling of, yeah, that's the direction that I need to head. And that would be a path to go explore and see if that's something, if the reality matches the theory of it, of what you kind of think that might be. But it's really difficult to think clearly when a person's fresh out of a divorce and they're feeling like they're kind of in this financial or emotional scramble. So you might want to save that purpose exercise for when you are feeling a little bit more like emotionally secure and financially secure in your life. So just be extra good to yourself right now. You can do it. You've gotten this far, and that's pretty far. So great job so far. Keep on keeping on, and keep us posted, okay? Here is a question from, and I have changed most of these names tonight. So this is from an Iraqi veteran who says, "Hi Dana, God bless you. I love your channel. I am an Iraqi veteran who has a narcissistic alcoholic father and an obsessive Catholic mother. I started to understand when I was around 15 years old what my father was. I remember when I was a teenager, I was in the hospital because I hurt my back playing basketball. My father picked me up from school and was very angry that I was hurt. He drove very passive-aggressively while being silent the whole time. He told me, 'You better be hurt. I had to leave work to get here, and the hospital bills are not cheap.' He stared at me with anger the whole time as the doctor was checking out my back. I had a bulging disc in my lower back and had to get treatment and do some physical therapy. My father hated it. He has been like that my whole life. If I was in some kind of pain or car trouble or what have you, he would get so upset and he could not stand me at all. This all included a lot of silent treatment and neglect. Everything is all about him. My mother always protects him by using religion, and she is very Catholic. I'm in my 30s now, and I'm starting to change myself. I've been no contact for almost 2 years, but still struggle with depression and so much confusion. I have definitely struggled with rejection my whole life. I am not very religious, and that doesn't fit well with my family. I feel that angry silence is what has really messed with my mind growing up. How do you understand the angry, silent, passive-aggressive behavior and how it affects a person? I am afraid of people. I am confused all of the time. Any advice on understanding the confusion and how to stop it? So, the understanding that angry, silent, passive-aggressive behavior, it sounds like you really do have a lot of clarity about that and the effects that it's had on you, and it is damaging and it is abusive. Silent treatment is a form of, ironically, strangely enough, it's a form of verbal abuse because it's a behavior that's designed to teach a person. It's designed to keep power and control over them by saying, if you don't act in a way that I feel that you should act, then I'm just going to freeze you out. I'm going to cut off communication. This will show you, kind of a thing. So it's really hurtful when you've got parents that are doing that kind of stuff, because then a person's growing up and they're not feeling, they're always feeling very kind of insecurely attached to their parents. Like everything is very conditional, right? So if there's only open, honest, sincere communication when your things are going their way, or when you're acting a certain way, then that's walking on eggshells. And so it's understandable that a person's going to feel really insecurely attached to other people. They're going to have a hard time trusting other people. It's that feeling of kind of hypervigilance, of always wondering, when is the other shoe going to drop? And it's hard for a person to be themselves when they're afraid that other people are going to leave them. Understandably so. So, but having clarity on that is a big piece of the puzzle, because silent treatment, that kind of conditional the feeling that our relationship is very conditional, that we're always maybe one or two conversations away from not having a relationship, how insecure a person can become with people that they should have the strongest bonds with, and how damaging that can really be. So to me, it sounds like you have a lot of clarity about this. You have a lot of insight into kind of your family, the dynamic that's going on there, and you've cut off contact, and I think you're saying you're struggling with confusion all of the time, and that was kind of confusing to me. Like I'm confused about your confusion. So I guess I would need kind of some more information about what that confusion is about, and because if you're and you also mentioned that you're afraid of people. So I think it's important to separate that people don't necessarily cause pain. It's people with problematic behavior cause pain. And the only way to tell what kind of person you're dealing with really is through time. So if you're around a person for long enough and you can really see their behavior for what it is, and you're seeing that do they have a pattern of like consistent behavior, and do they have that open, honest, sincere solutions-oriented communication? Are they treating you with dignity and respect? Kind of, what's going on? And so this is like how I'd mentioned earlier with the different types of boundaries, kind of that slow, gradual progression of, healthy boundaries is a person kind of keeping their distance, and then over time, and then it becomes close, and then over time that it becomes a friendship, and then over time it might become like a more intimate relationship. So it's that gradual progression. And so at any step along the way, if a person's showing behavior that's, especially if it's a pattern, of behavior that's problematic, or you're sensing some red flags or feelings of this person's not safe, then you're kind of backing things up again to a point either that you're comfortable with, or you distance yourself enough to where their behavior is not impacting you. So, or if you're confused and you're not really sure what you're seeing, to slow down and back things up enough to where those feelings of confusion calm down. Something else that you can do, because generally when a person is experiencing confusion, it's when we're seeing something that's problematic, but we wish we weren't. It's cognitive dissonance. Like, confusion is the first sign of cognitive dissonance. So, and it sounds like you have like I said, I'm a little confused by this, because it sounds like you have a lot of clarity. Like you have the clarity. You've cut off contact, with some family members. You have a ton of insight into their behavior, how you reacted to their behavior, the different types of events that they're, how they reacted to things, why that was problematic, the impact it had on you. So you, like I said, you've got a ton of insight. So if you're experiencing ongoing confusion now, I think it's definitely worth backing things up a little bit and seeing, okay, now why am I confused about these certain things now? And is it with everybody, or is it with certain people? And if it's only with certain people, what are they doing that's causing that confusion? Like, or kind of what's the situation that's going on that's contributing to this confusion? And the other part of that, so this is the concept, let me get some tea here real quick. In the book Psychopath Free, where he talks about getting a constant. I know I talk about this all the time, like I'm so in love with that concept. I just think it's genius. And so if you do have a person in your life, to whatever capacity, like it could just be like the healthiest person that you know, or the person that you think, this person really has some good judgment, right? To ask yourself, okay, if this person's my constant, how do I feel around them? Like if they're healthy, balanced, well-adjusted, how do I feel around them? Odds are you feel calm, you feel like you have clarity, you don't have those feelings of confusion, you don't have, there's none of these kind of like unpleasant feelings. Like you're feeling pretty even keel around them. So to ask yourself, okay, how do I feel around them? They're kind of like your baseline for what feels healthy, right? Then, okay, how do I feel around this other person? So for example, my brother is my constant. And so whenever I experience quote unquote confusing behavior, I ask myself, well, how would my brother interpret this? Like, what would he say if I were to forward these text messages on to him? Or if he was a fly on the wall, what would he have to say about this? Or would he ever act this way towards somebody? Because he's a really good guy, and he's got, like pretty even keel behavior, and he has a lot of insight, and I trust his judgment. So doing that, kind of examining, okay, what would this constant person, what would they think about this? And that could help to give a person enough emotional distance from the situation to be able to see things a lot clearer. So I hope that helped. So let's see. There is okay. This is from Rachel, who says, "Dear Dana, I hope you're doing well. I have been going through a really difficult time after my boyfriend left, and it happened so suddenly I could not believe it. Just to give you a brief overview, I met him on a dating app, and I spoke to him about 20 days before I actually met him, and he seemed extremely polite and humble and very mature, and that's when I decided to meet him, and he kept asking me when I would meet him as well. I met him, and there was an instant connection. We liked each other and decided to go ahead with the relationship. He would send me a poem every day explaining how I was the love of his life and that I was everything he had been looking for, and he would call me several times during the day and request me to meet with him every other day. I dated him for 1 month and 10 days, and during this period, he wanted to kiss me every other time, and during the third or fourth week of the relationship, he invited me home to meet his parents after he proposed marriage to me during the third week of the relationship. And he said his search for his life partner had finally ended, and he started about how many kids he wanted to have with me. I was falling in love with him as well, and I asked him for some time to get to know him better after he proposed marriage to me, and he agreed. While we dated, I did end up spending a lot more While we dated, I did end up spending a lot more most of the time. Randomly one day, he just states that he messaged me after some time, and I happened to call him after a day several times as I had to discuss something urgent with him, and he refused to pick up my calls as he was partying with his friends, and he yelled at me the next day saying I could have messaged him if it was urgent and asked him what was wrong with me. He just then stopped talking to me, and when I messaged him after a day and told him that the way he was behaving with me was not nice, and he was not even communicating what was wrong, he said if I can't respect the facts, he needs time, I can move on, and that he needs to discuss things with me. I told him I never stopped him from taking time and that I would not disturb him. And after that, he just disappeared. And after a month, he deleted me on Facebook. And when I then spoke to him, he said I took advantage of him and that I need to learn to respect time. I have not spoken to him since then, and it's been a while now. I was so crazy in love with him, and I thought he was the only one. I just don't understand why things ended so suddenly and so badly, and why he accused me of those things and just left. I'm not even sure if he's a narcissist, and I keep blaming myself for the relationship ending. Could you please help me, as I really want to heal and move on, but I keep thinking about my ex and what I did wrong for the relationship to end. And I miss him. I need your help. Thank you. Okay. So there's a lot of red flags in this for me, and it's not your fault. And this guy sounds incredibly problematic, and I'll go through what I see in this, okay? So there are a couple things. It really is a good idea if you're meeting people on the internet to not invest so much time or emotion in talking to them before you meet. So really trying to keep things, as soon as you realize that there's a connection through email or text, to very quickly talk on the phone. So I'm talking, and this goes back to valuing your time, valuing your emotions. So if you're communicating with them 2 or 3 times over email, 2 or 3 times over text, to then move the conversation to the phone to see if there's that connection over the phone. If there is, then saying that, let's meet, setting up some time to meet, ideally for something short, like a coffee date. You don't want to do lunch, you don't want to do dinner, you don't want to do, a movie and then a picnic, nothing prolonged. Like, you just want to make sure that this person is who they say that they are, that there is a connection, because you can click with a person in a wide variety of ways. You can click with them over email, over text, over the phone, or over the person, or in person. And sometimes you might really click with a person over email and phone, but then there's like no physical chemistry that when you actually meet them in person. So it's really important to meet right away, and then during that first meeting to see if there is that, there is that click. And this is why coffee can be great, because you're there for 30 minutes. A person knows within like 5 minutes if there's enough of a click there or not. So just kind of FYI for the future, because it can make it really difficult if you're spending, 20 days going back and forth and texting and emailing, and a lot of emotions can really get invested, that in when a person they haven't met the person, they don't really know this person, it can really create this like false emotional connection that's not authentically there because you haven't met them. So that was just something that I would recommend that you consider maybe doing different in the future. But so this guy, there was this connection. The speed at which he was moving is really problematic. You know, the what you're describing, sending you a poem every day, talking about how you're the love of his life, how he was professing marriage right away, and you know, he met his family and all of this. That's, and I'm not sure if you are from this country or like what, if this is like a cultural thing or kind of if there's more pieces to this puzzle, but you know, generally speaking, that kind of level of rushing intimacy, it's known as love bombing, and it's where you have an emotional manipulator who is basically telling their target everything that they want to hear. So it tends to be very flowery language. It tends to be kind of, you know, quote unquote, bombing their target with love. It's bombing their target with affection and attention. And it tends to be excessive, like hours upon hours every day. And this really leads to this whirlwind situation that tends to lead to them saying, I've met my soulmate, you're everything I've ever wanted. They're rushing things. You know, it sounds like he was, this is kind of why I was wondering if maybe this was like a culture, there's some cultural components here too, because you were talking about, you know, kissing you every other time, and you know, I don't know if things progressed past that, but if that's a lot, if that's seen as very physical for you or for your culture or for your religion, then, you know, it sounds like maybe this, you know, if he was kind of leading this on to for the relationship to become more physical, then maybe would normally be something that you would be comfortable with. But very problematic. You know, the fact that it sounds like, you know, you had texted him, he's saying, I need my space, but he's actually out partying, and then he just ups and disappears. These are not the actions of a man who is sincere about his intentions towards you. So it's one thing to say, hey, I need my time. And I think you were absolutely right to say, hey, I think we need to slow things down a little bit, and I need to really make sure that of you know, of what you're doing. That was a really good decision. So yay you for that, because like we were talking about earlier, anybody can be on their best behavior for like the first 30 to 90 days. You're not seeing a person, none of us are seeing a person accurately during that time, especially when those emotions start to get involved. It's really, you're really seeing kind of things through like rose-colored glasses. So it's really not seeing things clearly. And the fact that he would just up and disappear, he blocked you on Facebook, you know, none of this is your fault. None of that's normal behavior. A normal, reasonable person would not do that. They would not do any of that. They wouldn't try to push things physically this fast. They wouldn't talk about love. They wouldn't be sending poems. They wouldn't run so hot and cold. So really, anybody that runs that hot and cold, where one moment you're their soulmate and the next moment you don't exist, that's a problem. And to me, that's not workable at all. So I sincerely, and I know that you're in so much pain right now, but I really do sincerely hope that this is the last of it that you've heard from this guy, because it sounds like he plays a lot of games and his emotions are very shallow. So, you know, so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, you know, if a normal person has emotions and they say, I love you, there's depth to that, right? It's built over time, and it includes like respect, and you really know the person and you like the person, and there's this level of connection and depth there. And that can't be, that's something that's really best left to grow over time. Emotional manipulators, they talk all of these things, they say all these things, they have these intense professions of love, but their emotions are very shallow. So when they say, I love you, it's like that. It's sort of like saying, I really love this new pair of shoes, or I really love the sunset. Like, it's great, but there's not that level of deep connection there, versus where a normal person will say, like, I really love you. If they're truly saying that and they really mean it, there's that level of depth and connection that's there. But for emotional manipulators, it's not there. And so it's very confusing when a person gets tangled up with somebody that has that kind of behavior, because we tend to go through life thinking that other people are like us, and that if we have certain emotions, that they must have the certain range of emotions and the certain depth of emotions that we do. We all are our own baseline for normal. So it can be very confusing when we experience a person that seems to have the same emotions as us, but then their actions show that they really don't. Because if a man really loves you, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't up and disappear. And there's certainly, I mean, if you were to have done something wrong, a normal partner, an emotionally available partner, there would be more conversation there. There'd be more like solutions orientedness there. So the fact that there's none, he just poof, like up and vanished and then just blocked you, and it was just like nothing. That's not workable. Like in order for a person to actually be a partner, they have to be willing to work as a team and to be solutions oriented to things, not yell at you, not blame you for everything, and then not just up and vanish. So I know that you're in an incredible amount of pain right now, but I think you really dodged a bullet with this guy, and I hope that helps, and I wish you all the best. And please realize this pain is not always going to be this intense, and it does get better over time, and that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect all the time, from everybody, from every single person in your life. Look for a partner that really has that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, and realize that actions matter, that talk is cheap, and that anybody can say anything. Okay? So take care. Okay, let's see. Oh, did I write down the time? Kind of. Not really. 1:35. Let's see. Okay, I think that was it for questions that I had printed out. Let me scroll up here and see what's going on in the chat. Patania says, emotional manipulators are always very quick to say, I love you too. Yes, they are. They're quick to say anything that they need to say in order to get what they want to get. That's, they are emotional con artists. And it's important that we realize that these people do exist. They are out there. And to move forward at a pace that we're okay with moving forward with. Patania says, okay, the emotional manipulators are always very quick to say I love you. That should have been a huge red flag for me twice, but I didn't know any better. I actually don't think I have any clue what love really is. This is something I think a lot of people struggle with, and this was something I had to really kind of untangle too, because I'm like, how does this keep happening to me? Like, what am I missing? Like, how do I keep getting tangled up in these relationships and in these friendships and all of this? And for me, it was, I didn't have a solid footing. I was very easily swayed. So if I didn't have a very solid footing in my own opinion or discernment of situations. So I would feel like something's off, but if an emotional manipulator were to say, if they were to say, oh, I love you right away, I would feel like, oh, that's kind of weird. That seems kind of immature or odd. If I were to even say that, if they gave me an excuse or a justification, I just believed everything. And so I just doubted myself instead of like, and I guess I've felt like I had to have some sort of like concrete proof that something was really, really wrong in order to leave. Like just the feeling that something was off, I just stayed. I just didn't have a good grip on what was, I didn't have deal breaker behavior. I think, I mean, I probably did to some extent, but most of my problematic situations never even got to my deal breaker behavior. So I guess my deal breaker behavior would have been like physical abuse. It probably would have been cheating. Would have probably been my two things. But there's so much more that like leads up to that. Like that's pretty extreme stuff to actually wait around for that to happen. And even still, very few times, do you actually catch a person in the act. And again, like physical abuse also like happens over time. So it's a gradual process. So nobody thinks that they're ever gonna be physically abused. Like everybody thinks that would never happen to them. And so my idea of deal breaker behavior was really skewed from the get-go. And it's really been going through this and really examining, okay, what does my deal breaker behavior need to be? And it's been a constant refining process too, I should also add. Like it's been encountering enough problematic behavior that I'm like, you know what, I need to add that to the list. Like I'm not doing that either. So, and not second guessing myself, realizing if something is off, then it's off. Like I don't need, because there's no shortage of like well-intended bad advice out there. There's no shortage of people that are going to tell you it's not a problem when it really is, because they're not you. So if it's a problem for you, it's a problem for you. And when it comes to love, there's a saying in Buddhism that goes something like, the person that makes you anxious and excited and this kind of like emotional frenzy, that is not your soulmate. That is not your life partner. It's the person that you feel totally calm, cool, and collected around. Like that's the right kind of person for you. I agree completely with that. The problem is a lot of media and mainly like movies, TV, that kind of thing sells this image of our perfect partner being so charming and romantic and sweeping us off our feet and being kind of this Prince Charming type character, and it really creates this intense level of like emotions in this whirlwind situation where if we're not accurately kind of interpreting the situation, because all of that's like red flag city. But if we're misinterpreting these red flags as something that's healthy or even desirable, then that's a problem, because it's not healthy or desirable. It's the exact opposite. So it can take a little bit. I think real love is something that grows over time. Infatuation happens immediately, like lust, infatuation, that feeling of chemistry, that level of intensity of feeling like you've met this perfect person, that kind of stuff, that can be very common for a lot of relationships, especially during those first 90 days. This is why it's so important to really just go slow and to try to see the situation as accurately as possible, and to have a good idea of like what deal breaker behavior is for you, as well as like what deal maker behavior is for you. And realizing that like love, like true love it's built on a foundation. It's not just that this person gives you butterflies, it's that they have solid moral character and that they're honest and they treat you with dignity and respect, and that you feel valued, sincerely valued, and not confusing sincerity and intensity. Because emotional manipulators have that intensity. But true, like the right type of situation brings clarity, like, and calm, and that feeling of like, cool, calm, collected. Things are clear. You know where you stand. There's no hot, cold. There's no back and forth. There's no, no extreme highs, no extreme lows. There's none of that with a healthy, well-adjusted person. Yeah. Carolina says spiritual abuse and verbal abuse is the deal breaker. Beating me up with a Bible is such a turnoff, and then demeaning me is so non-Christian. It completely is. And that's a form of spiritual abuse. It's where a person uses God or the Bible or both to get power and control over their target. So it's kind of like almost like triangulating a person with God. So it's saying, if you were a good Catholic, if you really believed in God, if you really valued the oath that we took in church on our wedding, then you would do XYZ. So it's using the power and the control of the fear of God, or fear of guilt, or fear of shame, or using a person's religion against them in order to get them to do what they want. And you're right. God brings clarity. I mean, the Bible talks about this extensively. Jesus was the light of the world, and he brought clarity. That was truth and clarity. That was kind of what a lot of that message was. And the devil is the author of confusion. So it's interesting, right? Because there's like a lot of these same elements at play. But to realize, okay, this is how clarity feels. This is, a person knows if something is, when you're dealing with, I think, religion and spirituality, kind of sorting out God's message versus man's message. At least that's how I view it. To me, God, the creator, source, whatever, ultimate, creator, whatever name that you give to a higher power, to me that's about healing. It's about peace. It's about clarity. It's just that feeling of, you just know, like it's just that ultimate feeling of you're just juiced. You feel cool, calm, collected, excited, empowered, nourished, all of these extremely positive emotions. That's that. Problematic kind of stuff is, the confusion, the feeling, demeaned, belittled, devalued, defined, ground down, being called names, being threatened, fear, guilt, anger, shame, all of those feelings that are more on that side of, at a minimum, like unpleasant emotions. Those are two very different sides there. Like we're not talking about the same thing. So it can be confusing, but when things are right. When you're walking in goodness. And you can tell by the way that it feels. It feels like emotionally, you feel good. And so, yes, I talk about this oftentimes too, the feelings of, for me at this point in my life, my main deal breakers are any form of abuse, active addictions, adultery, or problematic attitude. So problematic attitude, problematic actions. So if a person, and what I mean by that is problematic attitude would be a lack of accountability, a person who's chronically negative. If they're not kind of got the basics of being an adult like down, those kinds of things, like that would be problematic actions, problematic attitude. Like to me that's the bare minimum. And at first it might, especially if a person's grown up in like a den of dysfunction, right, or they've had a series of really problematic relationships, they might think, oh my goodness, Dana, well, if those are your deal breakers, like who else is left? But the reality is there's a lot of people out there that don't have any of that behavior. And this is where it really gets down to finding like what your deal maker behavior is. And this is where it gets really individualized too. So it's knowing yourself well enough to know, okay, who am I? What am I about? What really nourishes me? What empowers me? What just really juices me? And so that, again, that's going to be a totally individual thing. So let's say, for example, if you're a musician or an artist, or you're really into sports, right? So let's say like you're an avid runner. It might be really important, like my brother, he's a personal trainer. He's super into working out. I don't know how we're related. He's like Mr. Fitness. And so it's really important for him to have a partner who's really into fitness too, because it's a huge part of his life. I mean, huge part of his life. So it wouldn't work for him to have somebody that's not a huge part of their life. Just like if a person's a musician, it might be really important to them that they love to, I don't know, play the cello. And so they like to do that for several hours every day, or they like to travel, they like to see live music, they like to be around music, they like to listen to music. If that's a really big thing for them, that might not be something that they want to compromise on when it comes to another partner. Whoever comes into their life is going to have to respect that that's their passion and that this is a big thing for them. Just like a person who is really, I mean, gosh, anything. If a person's really into their religion, if that's a really important thing for them, then it most likely it's going to need to be something that's important to their partner, or at least that their partner can respect enough. But it's okay to have certain things like be deal breakers too. So, and this just goes back to knowing yourself well enough and not apologizing for what your deal breaker stuff might be, because not everything is workable, or nor should it be, frankly. I mean, it's okay to be like, this is not going to work for me, this is what's important, cut bait and drive on. Oh, I love that. Connected 72 says, Carolina, look at your interactions with your partner, with your narcissistic partner, as an opportunity to grow. You can test your strength. For example, you can start saying no more and no justification or argument. Yes. So there is an acronym out there that I love. It's called JADE, Jade, like the stone. And it stands for justify, argue, defend, or explain. And the purpose of JADE is it's what we don't need to do like when we set a boundary. So for those of us that struggle with setting boundaries, realizing, okay, when you set a boundary, this is your line in the sand. You don't need to justify, argue, defend, or explain it. It's not. This is your life. It's not a democracy. Other people don't get to vote, especially other people who don't have to live with the consequences. And so if your boundary is a normal, healthy boundary that somebody like would set, if you were to say, you know what, I really need to be in bed by 10:30 because I have I've got to be up at 6:30 or whatever for work. If your partner is continually, if they're pushing that boundary, if they're arguing with you, if they're trying to keep you up all night, those kinds of things, realize seeing that kind of stuff for what it is and being like, this is a boundary. These are continual boundary pushes. I've made it very clear this is what I need. You can tell based on their actions that they don't care, like because they're continuing to actively work against you and do whatever they want. To realize, okay, like this is okay for me to. You can restate the boundary if you want. You can say, you know what, I said I had to go to bed at 10:30. It's now 10:45. I'm shutting the door. I'm like, shutting the door and turning off the light. Like, I've got to get to bed. This is disrespecting my boundary. Like, this is No joke. And so that's the thing with narcissistic partners, they don't like boundaries because they're not working towards a solution. They're working towards winning. It's all about gaining and keeping power and control over their partner and over the situation. So, and again, a lot of people get locked into this idea of thinking, well, like I just need to somehow get through to them. But the reality is that right there shows that something's off, because like it's like where's the confusion? Right? If you were with a friend, right, or like a coworker or somebody that you didn't have this dynamic with, like a person that you got along well with, if you had said, hey, you know what, I've got to get to bed, please don't call me after 10:30, they're probably not going to call you after 10:30. Or if you hadn't set that boundary and they did call you at midnight for whatever reason, if you were to say, hey, you know what, I got to be in bed by 10:30, I guess I got to get up, then if they respect your boundary, they don't call you after 10:30 anymore. So it's holding your boundary. And then this again goes back to, if you've got a partner that's consistently pushing your boundary and they're showing you time and time and time again that they're whatever you want, they don't care. They might say that they care, but if they're spinning it around, they're blaming you, they're saying, it's just this constant power struggle over everything, every step of the way, then asking yourself, okay, at what, like, do you want this? Do you want this life where you're having to continually draw and redraw and argue and justify and defend and explain boundaries to another person? Because a relationship should really function like a team. If it's not a team, if you're not working towards a common goal, and if each person's not respecting the other's boundaries along the way, then it's really going to be like, we're talking about staying till the bitter end. But if you're staying till the bitter end, then odds are the whole journey's going to be bitter too. And a bitter journey and a bitter end make for bitter people. So really getting clear on like, where are you in this, and like what are your deal breakers? It's not an easy decision to make, but it's definitely stuff that's worth thinking about. And but it's hard when you have a narcissistic partner, especially if you haven't had boundaries for so long, and the dynamic has been so one-sided for so long, where they're continually pushing boundaries or having a bunch of bad behavior, like chronic lying, cheating, siphoning funds, double lives, like this kind of stuff, where you're in this position where you're like, okay, I guess I have to continually forgive them and hold on to hope that they're going to change, because like if I actually held a boundary, then I'd be divorced by now, but I don't want to be divorced, so I guess I'm just going to have to convince myself that all of their lying, cheating, siphoning funds, double life, all of this kind of stuff is just due to poor communication. Like that's a problem. So really realizing, setting boundaries with a person, especially if they have a ton of really bad behavior, if they continue to show that they don't respect your boundaries, then when a person doesn't respect another person's boundaries, they're in a sense saying, I don't respect you, because our boundaries are an extension of who we are and what we value. Let's see. Martine says, boundaries are impossibly hard for me to draw, so it's hard when that doesn't get rewarded. Boundaries, it takes so much practice. What happened? Something happened? What happened? Martine says, you're right. I am just afraid of being misjudged. I have a friendship with Dana. I do not want to ruin over something petty like that. Okay, so this is a good example. I don't know what happened, and I'm all about open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. So if somebody, and I've known you, Martine, for like 2 years now. So if I did something and it was problematic, or if I don't know what I did, if I did something, then let me know, and then we can totally discuss it. It wouldn't, like, it generally takes like pretty major stuff for me. It takes like deal breaker stuff for it to be a deal breaker. If it's something petty that happened, then let's talk about it. How about you email me? Okay, he's saying I didn't do anything. My email is deardana@thriveafterabuse.com. If you don't have it, email me and let's talk about it. So, because that's the thing. So with it can be so difficult to have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, especially if it's not. Most people don't grow up with that. Like, I think most of us grow up with communication that's either passive aggressive, like door slamming, people burning dinner, silent treatment, like eggshells, elephants and eggshells. Like, there's just lots of that, and I think most people's environment, so there's a lot of that passive aggressive stuff, or it's the opposite, where there's a buildup of like people stuffing things deep down, where it's this constant like, okay, I'm having to just trying to go along for the sake of getting along, and then things get to the point where they can't handle it anymore, and then they explode. And so it's either that passive aggressive behavior or it's aggressive. And so that assertive behavior, that middle ground, it's not effectively role modeled for a lot of people, for a lot of us, and it's not effectively practiced. So if this is new for us, it's anything new, it takes practice, and it is really uncomfortable at first. But I think you'll be amazed as to how quickly, once you start implementing it, it really can become more and more normal, to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did anything else. And because it's so much easier. So if you make a mistake and you're like, you know what, and you just own up to it, you're like, this is what happened, and I'm so incredibly sorry. And like, people just own their stuff. Like, it's life is so much easier when people just own their stuff, and then verbally own it, and then take a different course of action to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future. Because it's life, and things happen, and people aren't perfect. So and practicing boundaries like that, and paying attention to how people respond to that. So, if you are setting that boundary and you want to bring something up, and the other person doesn't want to hear it, then that's a problem, because that's showing, okay, then they're not comfortable actually working towards some sort of solution or resolution. And like that all of those elements have to be there in order for like a friendship or a relationship to go anywhere. If you're missing any one of those elements, it's like a cake. Like, you need the flour and the sugar and the egg and the water, and and if all of those elements aren't there, then you don't have a cake. You have some sort of like hunk of goo. So it's really important those elements are there. So it's dignity and respect and honesty, and sincere, open, honest communication and trust, and all of these different elements. And this is again like why it's being around a person long enough to where you can see their actions over a prolonged period of time, like how they are in different situations. Like, how are they when something comes up? How are they when they get sick? How are they when they lose? How are they? I forget who I was talking to. Somebody, I think it might have been my mom. Somebody was saying that a good date is to take somebody bowling. And which I thought that was pretty good, because you can tell a lot about like how controlling they are, if they're really playing to win, if they're how they react, different types of situations, to see how people handle life, how they handle life. So yeah, totally. Email me. Let me know what's going on. Yeah. So, because it's, I mean, my goodness, it's such a, all of this has been, the support group, the, like, the website, the email, like, all of it. And has been a huge learning curve for me. It makes me sad that other, like, when people get hurt in any way, shape, or form, it makes me sad. And it especially if it's something that I'm like, man, I really should have been more on top of that, or this like, if I'm just not organized enough. I mean, it's just been a really, really rocky learning curve. So please know that my intentions are in a good place. If something's not working as it should, then it's not that I don't care, it's that it either has to do with I'm so overwhelmed that like things are slipping between the cracks, or I'm like my system for organizing things is not there, or we're riding a learning curve. So a lot of that with this stuff in this support group has been an enormous learning curve, and so I'm sorry if that's been part of the stress with any of it. People are talking about people calling after 10:30 at night. So, and Linda says, yes, get an air horn the next time they call after 10:30. You know, my my thing is I used to keep my phone on 24/7, and if any of my friends ever had a problem, they always knew they could call me. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they did call me like really late at night, and I finally got to the point where I'm like, I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. And so it was a slow boundary that I had to set. So at first it was like, you know what, I love you guys, and I, you know, I can talk up until like a certain point, and then I'll call you first thing in the morning, and was just trying to get more balance in my life that way, so it wasn't sinking me to try to keep them afloat. It's finding that like balance. So then I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I really like having like an hour or so at night to just unwind. And so then I kind of bumped the time back a little bit more. And then and it's funny because it's really funny because when you let people know, okay, this is, and then if really it's been like a non-issue for many years now, but letting people know, okay, yeah, I turn off technology, like I start unwinding at about 8:30, like 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and that's my time. And now it's just gotten to the point where I turn my phone off. Now it's to the point my phone's off 24 hours a day. Like I don't even turn my phone on. It's the volume is off. I only look at my phone when I want to look at the phone. So I'm not kind of being held captive by. I'm not in this constant state of reaction. If my something's chiming or dinging or ringing or what have you, I look at the phone when I want to look at the phone, and that's brought a lot more peace into my life. So somebody had asked, Oh, other acronyms. It's a jade and then fog. And yes, I have another one. I actually made this one into a little thing. I don't know if I have this on my website or not, but it helps me to see it. So this is an acronym that I made up, and it's ways that narcissistic or abusive people manipulate. And I call it I-chive. And it stands for intimidation, charm, hope, isolation, violence, emotions, fear, love, obligation, and guilt. So it's the I-chive and then the E for emotion. So it's really, the first one is not supposed to be intimidation, it's supposed to be isolation. So it's isolation, charm, hope, intimidation, violence, and emotions. And under emotions, it's a sub-acronym of FLOG, fear, love, obligation, guilt. And those are all of the different ways they go about manipulating, being like an emotional con artist. I'm trying to think if there's any other... there's quite a few acronyms out there. Another acronym is... it's for ways that people go about manipulating, and it's flags: fear, lust, anger, greed, sympathy. And there was another one I came across the other day that was pretty good. I'll have to think about it. Yeah, if anybody knows any more acronyms, let me know, and I'll make them into like a document or something. So people can have them. Carolina says, I get up at 5 a.m. to work out while I pray. Then it's coffee and Bible devotional time. I listen to meaningful worship music, and I and my feet need my attention. Yes. And she says, Dana, I'm done being flogged. Yes, I agree. I agree. So it's, you know, love is not about emotionally manipulating another person in order to keep us stuck in a situation. You know, love, and the Bible is very clear about like what love is, right? Like love is patient, love is kind. It does not, you know, it is not envious, it does not boast. And so the opposite of that, you know, control, manipulation, you know, envy, jealousy, those kinds of things, the opposite of what it says love is what love isn't. But I'm really glad that you have a really solid morning routine. That's good. That's good self-care. So yay you for that. Oh, Elise, that's a good one. Well, I will cover that next time. She says, talk about the relationship triangle, the persecutor, victim, rescuer. Let me make a note of that. Yes, 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 yes. For next time. So, okay guys, well, I think I am close to calling it a night. And it's almost 11 o'clock here. I've got to get to bed, and my voice is going. 2 live streams in 2 nights is a little difficult for me. So thank you everybody so much for joining, and I really appreciate everything. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate all of the wisdom and the experience and the support that you guys give each other. It's just awesome. And oh, you know, Mark, real quick, I think you had said that you were going to email me, and I'm not sure. I was looking for it, but I wasn't sure where you were going to send it because I have about, I don't even know how many different inboxes everywhere. So if I haven't responded to you, it's because I haven't gotten it. So if you want to email me at deardana at thriveafterabuse.com, I'll put your name in the. Okay, can you resend it to me? Can you put your name in the subject line so I know, so I can link up that it's you? Okay. So, okay, guys, and yes, I will see you next week. So you guys take care. Be really good to yourself. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect by everybody, including yourself. So have a fantastic week, and just lots of love to you guys as always. So you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I will see you guys next week.